That was David Attenborough's Wild Isles, and there are some spectacular scenes in that series featuring eagles and orcas. It's definitely not to be missed. But now here in Scotland, we're certainly not short of beautiful places and nature all around us, although for some people, these special places just don't feel like somewhere they belong or that they can easily access. And it can be a bit nerve-wracking to go on adventures in the outdoors if you haven't been before, or if you can't see representation, then it feels even harder. Well, I'm joined now by two outdoor lovers who are passionate about spreading the word. Frankie Butler is based in Aberdeen and she heads out on her crutches to explore as often as she can. Rahila Mogul started Bonnie Boots, the women's branch of Glaswegian hill walking group Boots and Beards, which organises walks for locals from ethnic minority backgrounds, particularly Scots Asians, to explore the great outdoors. Great to have you with us this morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, good morning.
I was wondering if you were still with us. Hello. Rahila, it's hi. I've loved researching and hearing about your background, because as a fellow Scot Asian, many people in my family in Pakistan seem slightly perplexed and even bemused at my love of mountain climbing and hill walking. I did Kilimanjaro last year making a film, and certainly I think it was the older generation that kind of really struggled to understand my passion for it, for being out in the outside and taking on this huge physical challenge. I think it's a bit of a stereotype really in South Asian culture, almost like, in LA, we just don't walk anywhere. But I would just love to hear your experience. When did you first discover a love of the great outdoors?
Well, good morning, everyone. Zara, we have the Bonnie Boots group, which is like an offshoot of Boots and Beards, which started back in about 2017. But before that, we had the Boots and Beards group, which we would join. And again, that's a family hill walking group now. So we would go out on walks, and it was really the logo that did it for me. It was quite masculine. It's got that kind of beards and the boots on the logo, so that sounded quite sexist to me, and I thought, don't like that at all. So we need to have our own branch, and that's where we kind of sprung from. We decided to have the Bonnie Boots as a new logo, and then kind of just keep that for the ladies when they go out. I mean, we're still walking with the guys, but it was a group that was just for ladies.
Yeah,
I give them a comfortable space to walk in, and like-minded ladies all going out on Saturday morning for a walk. A bit of exercise and a bit of banter. That's really what it was.
And was this something that you did as a child? Do you remember going out on many walks, or did you explore the great outdoors when you were much younger?
I would say we did go out on walks, but maybe not as far out. Mm-hmm. So I remember my dad would take us out on a Sunday, and I think Campsies was a very kind of common one. And that was one that stuck in my mind, up and down, up and down. And we'd say, when are we going to get to the top? When are we going to get to the top? And, you keep going on. It's just as you get to the top of one hill, you see another one. And as a child, it's encouraging that you're nearly there. So I do remember a lot of that. Park walks we would do regularly as well.
You had some experience. It's great to hear, and I think for many people, even now when they're out on the hills, it can be quite an inspiration to see children climbing or being up and out walking as well. Frankie, you've always loved being in the outdoors, but you've really had to find new ways to get out and explore. Can you tell me a little bit about your injury and how that changed your ability to get out and about?
Yeah, morning. And that was really lovely to hear what you were saying about the outdoors as well. And for myself, I used to be an international hockey player, and I suffered a pretty devastating injury that put me in a wheelchair. And I spent a lot of time before then out in the hills and enjoying the beaches, running, all sorts of things like that. And when I became injured, I just didn't know where I fit in that place, in that world. And I had to really find, what works for me. And I'm a geology student, so I missed out on quite a large component of field work and exploring like that. And I had to really work to get back part of this community. Mm-hmm. And it was things like looking on Instagram and seeing other people outside enjoying themselves on Twitter, and looking up on Google Earth and seeing what routes worked and Ordnance Survey and things like that. And yeah, it's been a hard trek, but right now I'm actually calling you from Anstruther on my first geology field trip with my university,
Oh, wonderful.
and I've worked really closely with them about how I could access the rocks, and I honestly have not felt happier for such a long time. So this program came at a perfect time.
Frankie, it must have been a very difficult period for you, especially considering you were incredibly active, that you had a sport. I think often when we hear stories of people who have suffered such devastating injuries, quite often it can hamper their kind of progress in that area. But for you, it's served as a sort of source of inspiration. Can you talk about the time when the first time you decided to go out, and what that was like? How did it feel, and were you able to kind of explore as you'd hoped to?
So the first time I went out, I was quite terrified, to be honest. I have a condition that is essentially extreme pain 24/7. And everything hurt, wind blowing against my leg, vibrations, so all sorts of things like that. So the first thing I did was just sit on a bench and I just listened. And I heard positive, happy sounds like birds, like the wind whistling through the leaves. And I got to see things happening around me, things moving, because I felt quite stationary. Like I felt like my early 20s had been stopped. Things that I used to enjoy and used to do all the time were gone. And I was left with this sort of hole, and I was trying really hard to fill it in. And it really just started with sitting outside and just listening and seeing things around me and knowing that I am part of something bigger. And it really made me feel once again connected, because for anyone that goes through anything difficult, a mental health problem, financial crisis, an injury, you feel quite isolated, and it's important to feel reconnected again. And yeah, I just decided to sit outside, and then it started with just that. Then I was on my wheelchair and thought, right, I want to go around the block. And I really got to know the block I lived on, looked at every single leaf, saw it change through the seasons. And eventually I was able to actually do a marathon on my wheelchair. And, but it all started with just sitting outside and enjoying nature.
Wow, you've done a marathon as well. I mean, it sounds like it's something that has really, motivated you to keep achieving in the field of sport. You talk about it in a sense that kind of reminds me of the mindfulness that connects us to nature. And, quite often when we think of being outside, people often attribute it to being fit, being healthy. But really, you've raised a very valid point, which is the kind of the mental health benefits that we get from that. And I know that a number of people talk about the spirituality. So I want to kind of lean into this a little bit with yourself, Rahila, because I think being outside connects us to the earth, and for people of faith, it can be quite a spiritual experience. When I was climbing to the Uhuru Peak in Tanzania last year with climbing Kilimanjaro, I was with a group of grieving parents, and we made a documentary called Closer to Heaven. And the reason it was titled that was that one of the parents I was climbing with, Simon Allen, who had lost his daughter Mia, as we reached the top, he said, when we walk up here above the clouds, it makes me feel closer to heaven and closer to her. And I thought it was a very important, poignant point that he made. So is it a spiritual or a spirituality and mindfulness the same? Do you get those benefits, Rahila?
I would say at the outset that wasn't our intention, but as a Muslim, I do find that when you go outdoors, you do realise that, there's more at play than we think. There is a system out here, and it almost cushions us. So when we go out, when I personally go out, I do find that, if I have problems, grievances and all that kind of thing, being outdoors does help an awful lot. Like I said, it kind of cushions me, feeling that, there's someone out there that's got me safe, someone that's managing this entire universe. Someone that's managing the nature around me. If you look at like Frankie said, the colour of the leaves changing, it's such a gradual process, and that is the case with our lives as well. It's going from the green to the yellow to the brown and reds. It's a gradual process with nature, as it is with our lives as well. So we have the ups and downs, but yeah, I feel it certainly does make me feel closer to nature, and even my faith as well.
I'm also looking at both of your stories and seeing that there's one very prominent theme, and then that's that accessibility and having that representation. Obviously Rahila had mentioned that she felt that she wanted to have female representation, but also from a South Asian background, that was very much present. Frankie, what did you find when you first started looking for these adventures or these routes around Scotland in particular? What did you find in terms of accessibility?
I did find accessible routes, but a lot of them were really quite short and small. They were just sort of around parks, and that's great to start. But I was sort of looking for that feeling of exploration and the feeling of being somewhere where no one has really been before. Obviously, you need to be somewhere someone's been before to know it's safe, but that feeling of really exploration. So I actually looked on, it was Walk Highlands, and I saw walking routes, and obviously they've not been checked out for wheelchairs or crutches. And I decided to go and see, are they suitable and would they work? So I'd take photographs and put them on my Instagram. And when you search on Instagram or Twitter at the moment, there aren't too many images of other folk on wheelchairs or crutches outside in the great outdoors. And I think it's almost having that permission to know that you can go out there, no matter what mobility aid you have. There's a fantastic lady called Debbie North who does so much on the Yorkshire moors, and has actually got these all-terrain vehicles for folk that can't self-propel themselves on wheelchairs. Yeah. So there are people really pushing things forwards, but at the moment there's not too much in Scotland, and I'm hoping to help change that.
Frankie, what's the reaction from people when they meet you on the hills, either in a wheelchair or now in your crutches? What do you tend to experience when you meet people?
At first it's a look of surprise, and then it's actually so overwhelmingly positive. People are really interested, they want to know where I've been, and they don't actually ask me what's happened, which is really nice because I don't want to have to relive that really traumatic event. But I get to talk about things I've achieved and I've done, and I sometimes get really good top tips from them. They say, oh, head down that bit, you can see the seals out in the harbour, or go over there, you can see a wonderful view. The reaction's been really positive. I actually had quite a funny one up in Lochimver. I was wheeling up this logging track towards a quarry, and this old guy was driving down on his tractor, and he stopped and he got down off the tractor and he said, I thought my eyes were deceiving me when I saw someone on a wheelchair wheeling himself up this hill. And it was just brilliant. And to know that perhaps they're going to go home and chat to their mates or speak to their friends in the pub to say, I saw someone on a wheelchair out today, and that might give someone the confidence to know they can try it themselves.
Well, it's great you have had such a positive experience, in fact, both of you. And I just want to ask one final question very quickly to you both. Rahila, if you had, one place that people should go to explore in Scotland, what's your one kind of place, your one bit of advice you give them?
One place I would say that can encompasses, up, down, hills and water and things like that would be Pucks Glen.
Oh, great.
That's wonderful. It's almost something, I would definitely recommend Pucks Glen.
Thank you. I haven't been, but it's now on my list. So thank you. And also Frankie.
So for me, it would actually be Canis and the Northwest Highlands. It's a wonderful trail there. You get a really good mix of off-road, on-road and the beautiful mountains.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you both so much for those recommendations. It has been really great speaking to you both. You can find Frankie Butler on Instagram if you'd like to see what she gets up to. And Rahila Mogul is from Bonnie Boots, an offshoot of Boots and Beards walking group. They also organise badminton and other exercise activities. So do check them out. And do catch the first episode of Sir David Attenborough's latest epic series, Wild Isles, which starts tonight on BBC One. If you want to find out more about Wild Isles and how you can get involved